Welcome to the Consultant's Way podcast. I'm Dean McMahon, one of your hosts.
And I'm Anthony Paluska. In each episode, we explore the world of consulting professional services through case studies, our own experiences, and interviews with industry leaders.
We're focused on improving individual skills and improving business practices and improving the success of the consulting business.
I think you'll enjoy what we have in store today. This is the Consultant's Way podcast. I'm Anthony Paluska. This is Dean McMahon, and we on every episode we interview a professional services executive with experience on a variety of different topics. Today we're talking to Pat Muirragui, and I will let Pat introduce himself, and then we will dive into the topic of the day.
Thanks for having me, Dean and Anthony. I'm Pat Muirragui. I live in San Diego, California. I'm an original Floridian. I've been here for about 20 some odd years. I am by trade an engineer and an engineer at heart. Over half of my career has been spent on product and development, but the second half has been a lot more interesting on the go-to-market side, and particularly on the professional services side. So while I loved being an engineer and working on product things, I found the love in actually working with customers and helping them with their business problems, but also their technical problems as well. So it was a really good fit for me.
Pat, I think you're one of the few people we've met with that has got an understanding of the major pieces in a tech company, right? I've done development, I've done field, I've done deals, and I've run professional services. And I think that gives you not just empathy across them, but maybe a better handle on how to make it all work together, where PS is not always seen as the valuable asset it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, Dean, that's probably one of the things that if I look back and I can call myself successful in what I've done, it's because of that. All the work that I've done and being in hardware and in software development, also being in short stint in QA testing, has really fueled me and enabled me to go do what I can do today in professional services. And it's because I can have that empathy, just like you said. And the reason why is that that's who we work with. We work with the developers, we work with the project managers, we work with the engineering teams. And so if we can think like them, we can work better with them. So you're spot on with that.
Given that background and that position there, no surprise the topic that you want to spend some time talking about is one that you're passionate about, and so are we, which is professional services as something that ought to and needs to be embedded in every deal and every opportunity. We believe, right, it's a kind of a moral issue that professional services completes the product and completes the offering that we have as an organization and actually makes that work in the customer's environment to deliver on the mission. But would love your just kind of overarching statement, and we'll dive into the details of it as to why you're so passionate about that specific topic and how you would summarize it.
In the beginning, when I first started kind of where I am today, professional services was kind of an afterthought, and it was kind of here's the team here that'll kind of plug the wires in for you, Mr. Customer. But what it turns out is that we were pretty naive in our early years in thinking that. And what we've learned is that it is fundamental not only for the business but also for the customer, for many reasons that we'll dive into.
Yeah, I think that one of the key reasons that we always stress it is you don't get an outcome unless you change stuff as a client, and you're not going to change stuff without a partner that's there working with you. And then the second thing that happens for the organization, because you've been working with that client, you have a level of intimacy, understanding, and sway that the rest of the organization will never have. Sales does not have that because they are there and then they go back. And also consulting happens live, right? So they need to know what to do. We always say it's like baseball. A second baseman needs to know what to do with the ball. Professional services needs to know what to do. Where sales can go, no offense to sales, they have their own complexity, but they get to go back to the organization and strategize internally where the PS person's, live.
A lot of things that you said in there that resonate. So number one, the building of the relationship. right? And in the beginning, and the buyer's journey is, a lot of pre-sales. So that's where the sales and pre-sales engineers kind of start off and begin that relationship. But then that gets handed off, and there's work to do, right? And that work to do isn't, in our world, isn't just here's some help documentation, here's the developer portal. We'll spend an hour with you, and then knock yourself out. Good luck. We'll see you go live. It's really an opportunity to get intimate, as you said. I like that word, intimate, with the customer, build the relationship. The relationship is multidimensional, right? It's not just a set of developers. You have developers, you have testers, you have program managers, you have product owners, you have executive stakeholders. So this is our opportunity to form relationships all across the goal line, right? And I'm kind of using a football analogy here, but it's, how are we matching up, across across that line of scrimmage. Looking back and learning from experience, people like doing business with people that they like and they get along with. And so that's the first really opportunity, is to go in there and build that relationship.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. And so be, everything you said there, it speaks to the value of the professional services role in that entire equation. Yet, right, you started the conversation a little bit earlier on it used to, professional services used to be viewed as the group that just comes in, plugs in a couple of wires, and makes and the product just works in the back end of it. There's still a big disconnect in what we've observed in the market, and I'm sure you've seen the same around. We still think about things in the old mentality, and the old model of professional services still plays this role. Yet there's all this value that you just described that helps the customer relationship and helps the overall outcome. Any sense on why you might think that disconnect still exists in a large part in many organizations?
I think the disconnect, I mean, you can start getting into, product nuances. You could start getting into things also like, customer expansion, right? If you're a highly transactional sale and it's a one and done and let's move on to the next customer, then I think you're going to have that disconnect. But for our business, and I think for many businesses that have professional services that require them, we're talking about large customers here. We're talking about large sums of money. We're talking about large value problems. And so we want to, when you start and when you implement and when you launch, that's really just the beginning. It's really just the beginning of the entire work stream. And so the old disconnects, I think, there for maybe older style type of business models, but for the newer ones where you want to land, grow, and expand customers, we're learning that no, professional services needs to come around. Not only do we need to get in there for implementation, but we also want to get them on the. We want to get customers enthusiastic about continuing to work with professional services as they grow, because what they buy in the beginning is just a starting point, right? It's just to get them started, especially with large financial institutions. What they get, they're not going to give you everything that they have, and so it's a process.
I like the idea that our PS people have to understand how to bring the client along, how to upsell, how to identify, so that the value chain continues for more product sales, if nothing else, right? And so we always stress that it's the 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 team needs to know consulting in addition to the technology, right?
100%. And today, I mean, we do team up with others, and I think it's important to have kind of a greater account team,
Right.
where you do have, you still have the seller involved, you still have the pre-sales and people involved, the sales engineers or solution engineers, or also the customer success. And so that team together kind of really works in terms of getting them successful in terms of what are they using today, making sure that they're successful in what they're implementing today, and then also what they're making sure that we're framing the right things and feeding them the right products, and hopefully the new products that come off the conveyor belt from product to feed, so that they're successful in buying what they need for tomorrow. So, but it is very important because each of those, there is a not the like many of those have technical aspects, but a lot of them have business aspects too. And so it's good. And some of the most sharpest PS folks that we have, on my team is I like to ensure that they have a business sense too, because I think that's really important.
Absolutely, absolutely, and understanding how to talk to the client and how to hear from the client, and then we always say bring the client along because they and often the client doesn't they envision that they're going to do what they promise, but they don't staff it right, and so these all these complexities that are about getting the outcome, and that's a lot more than understanding the tech, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and particularly if you're going to drive new deals, yeah.
Yeah, understanding the tech, I think, really comes kind of at the end. And you said something there that I really work with on my team, and it's listening, but it's also knowing what question to ask next.
Yeah.
And we try to train out of, well, I know the answer, I just can't wait to tell them solution. And I said, instead of doing that, how about we think about the problem or their problem just a little bit more and try to think about what other questions could we ask to learn more.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's one that is missed maybe too
Oh,
often. We
yeah.
we were on the topic of expanding relationships just a little bit ago today, and two things that you just hit on that are trainable, but sometimes organizations just feel like they can't. One is, okay, we can pre-plan or we can plan for and strategize for those upsell and those expansion opportunities well in advance to make sure that everybody knows the role that they can play and knows the right questions to ask and the right communications to have along that journey. One, and then the second piece to that is we fall into this trap too often as professional services executives to get our head down, get the work done, deliver on a statement of work, and then move on because we're against a budget and a scope. But taking the extra time to build some of those relationships, build some of that intimacy, and ask a couple of those additional questions rather than just showcasing our expertise all the time. Those are two things that we found are very trainable, but not they don't always come naturally to most professional services organizations.
Yeah, that's true. And that kind of just takes me back to the beginning. And in the beginning, when we first were setting up the program, it was our KPIs were things like time to live and time to value and getting the work done, completed, stamped, done, launched,
Yeah.
hooray.
Yeah.
But now it's really looking. Now we really look at incentivizing on ways on how we can grow the customer, and to do that, to have that outcome, you really have to have a good trained ear to look for the problems, right? People look, oh, the fires, the problems that we're having with this customers, but while those are tough and they're never timely, they are the best opportunities to say, how can we help this customer? How can we fix it? And how can we do it with something that we haven't done before? And that leads to growth.
You've already said one of the key takeaways we're going to get from today, which is grow the account. If you set that as your objective, whether you achieve it or not,
Yeah,
it changes our measurements, it changes the activities, it changes the things we talk about to the client, to ourselves, and to the organization. And that's key because, like you said, often we still see my job is to get in and out. My job is to get in and out. Well, they're that doesn't mean they're successful, right? That means you
correct.
you did your 18 tasks and and you're done. And that's not really one, that's not really consulting, but two, it's not really helpful. So I love the takeaway that if we just had our mind on whether it's more product, it doesn't matter. We're supposed to help grow the account and we're there live and we have the executive access.
That's right. And I would say that we're pivotal. We're very pivotal in terms of, making that happen. Because again, customers like who they, do business with people who they like. So if we can get in there and we can have a great experience, and that's where a good customer onboarding program comes into play. It's not just, a deck of slides, or it's not a shiny great developer portal and walking through with guidance or awesome training. It's the whole experience. Yeah, during those times you're gonna hit, there's gonna be bumps, and there's gonna be, there might be some escalations, and there might be some opportunities. And so that's where a great program comes into play to keep that going and make it sticky. And you get past implementation number one, and now it's like, hey, that was a great experience, that was a good program. Patent company, thank you.
I
We
like
had
that
an
patent company. I like that brand, Pat. That's great. We're
I'm
gonna use that,
trying.
Pat.
I'm
We're gonna use it.
trying, dude.
No, no, that's hey, yeah, and something you said, reminded me of the importance of, having our consultants understand, and this is something we talk about a lot, was one, is you are actually their friend. That's your job. You are supposed to help them, empathy, be their friend. Don't violate good consulting rules on, hey, that's gonna cost money, or here's how you can solve that. But take the attitude that, one, we really want this client to be successful. We really care about them, and you're their friend, and add value. We try to argue, add value to every client executive interaction, right? Don't just report out on what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think it's of having a value mindset. If I could
Yeah.
coin that one.
Mhm.
So we get some takeaways: patent company, value mindset. These are good.
There's another one there too, Dean, that I want to mention on the reason why it's important, and I think one is or the one in particular that we've been burned on is project prioritization, and that is the charging for PS. So one of the problems that we had, one was the afterthought, but two was just including it for free. And so there's a big difference between including it for free and including it for paying for it. And the reason is prioritization, because when they pay for it, now it's a budget line item on somewhere that is associated with somebody's with some kind of stakeholder there. And so when you go, what we learned is that we're not always the project, the most important project that the customer has that's implementing. And so at times we fall in and into a kind of a big puzzle of a number of different components and parts of their greater solution, and other vendors are involved. And guess what? Those things are done sometimes not in an agile manner, and they're done in kind of a waterfall type approach. One thing needs to be focused on, and versus the next. And and what we learned was the free ones come last, and the
Absolutely.
ones that get paid for get prioritized first. And so when we started hearing that we were go live dates were being pushed, and that was kind of our first indicator, we started asking why, and then we started climbing up the ladder, and we found this out, that our projects were being prioritized because, well, what we found in common was the ones that were deemed deprioritized were free.
The truth is they have to pay for it, and they've got to pay attention to it, right? And if you
That's
can't,
right.
if you, so I learned this, Pat and company. I learned this when it was time to buy my wife another ring. We'd been married a long time, another wedding ring, and I happened to have worked in New York a long time, knew a lot of people, and I said, "Oh, I can get a good diamond really inexpensively." But I found out that's not the right road. The road was lots of shopping and overpaying, because it symbolized investment and caring. And that's the way we should think about a client. It's okay to charge them a lot if you're going to drive a lot of value. And I want their attention, right? I want them worried, but free is never good. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, they don't. So, but one thing I will tell you, something that the auditors have decided on revenue rec: if services are free and they're not done in one day, that revenue is actually services, not product, because you can't move revenue up. You have to recognize it as that. So you might use that.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
And I think to add on to that too is ensuring that revenue, right? We talked about why it's good, for the customer and getting that implementation in there, but the follow on is ensuring the revenue, ensuring that they're going to use the product, that the usage will come through. But in my tech, things are highly transactional, and so customers will throw volumes of traffic at us. These are onboarding of their customers is a very popular use case, but we won't see everything that we plan if we don't, or that they've planned with us in terms of volume, unless it's successful, unless the product is working like to their expectation and to their success criteria. So we really have to tune to that. So the revenue really, we can miss the opportunity to turn the ACV into revenue, if we don't deliver, and we don't tune, and we don't execute. So revenue, I call it revenue insurance, or ensuring the revenue that it's going to be there. And that's probably one of the most important things on our side, is that we got to establish that early and soon, and we have to get that, I think other people call it time to value. We have to lock that in, and a lot of times we have to work hard at doing that. And we're good at that, because that's what we've been doing for so long. But it's really important, when it comes to forecasting, and things like that. And being a public company, that's there's a lot of eggs get put in the forecasting basket.
Yeah.
And counterintuitively to most that haven't lived through that journey, right, to the point you were on right before that, which is, if they're not paying for it, then we might feel like we're ensuring the revenue by giving something away or by doing something for them in the process, but it's less and less likely that they're going to take the steps needed on their end to make sure that they actually get the outcome out of the services we're providing. So it reinforces all the bad behaviors.
Yeah.
Right?
So, Pat, this has been great, and you are a wealth of knowledge, and we really appreciate that. I'll ask you to hit us with 2 or 3 points that you think are the most important as the takeaway for people, and then we're going to make a little assignment for them to become a part of Pat and Co.
Absolutely, would love to here. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure to be on. And so the takeaways here are, really just taking it from the top. It is important. It is very important and hypercritical to have professional services included with every deal, and especially, I speak for that for a lot of software as a service type companies. And with where it's not a plug and play type of environment. Relationship building, the opportunity to do that is key. Is number one. Is without inclusion of that, you're going to miss or don't miss the opportunity to build and form great relationships that can become your $1 million customers and partners. The second big takeaway is, don't give things away for free, because that will buy you a ticket to having your work deprioritized. We've seen it. This is something that we've measured, and it's something that, thank God, we really don't do anymore. And then the last thing I would say, the reason why to do it is, for looking out, for the love of your company and the love of revenue, ensure, do it to ensure your revenue, that you ensure that you're delivering, that the revenue that's planned can actually be realized.
Amen.
And so those are the key, in summary, kind of the three key points to why it's important.
All right, Pat, that's been just super and a great conversation. We'd like to have you back sometime, but what everybody should do, I think now is, begin to focus on why isn't it embedded in every deal? How do we educate our organization to make it embedded? Stress what Pat stressed on the takeaways, and try to move yourself to a better place, because if we always say, if they don't pay for it, they don't care. And if you're not there, you can't make a difference.
Yeah, and as Pat's done, as much as you can embed those goals and metrics into our standard KPIs or incentives for individuals, the more effectively we'll be able to measure and manage to those particular outcomes we're shooting
Yeah,
for.
grow the account.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pat. Well, today we're going to share a little bit about the conversation we had with Pat, and particularly, I think we're most touched, maybe interested, but that's so self-serving, but most touched with the idea, big banner, PS and everything. Small banner, PS is the guide that makes it all work. And as we talked with Pat, we pushed hard, and he reacted well to, yeah, you're right, PS is got to be there in person. PS has got to have executive relationships. So how does that all resonate with you and your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think in It depends on the type of the organization, but I think every organization underinvests in that central thread that can connect the original reason that somebody bought to all of the things that need to be done between that first day all the way through the ultimate journey that they go on. And professional services is just an ideal team to play that role in that whole process because they can support with the pre-sales process early on. They can help identify some of those things. They build that initial relationship. They make the first fix, and they uncover all of the other things that are unique to that particular customer. You see it all the time that our sales team does that, and they manage that. Well, the sales team is managing way too many accounts for any of that to ever be possible, and frankly, they're not compensated to be involved in that in most cases, right? They need an asset like the professional services team.
You're right. It doesn't fit the sales mentality or anything.
Yeah.
I was thinking of an example that we had a client that did this really well, and I was trying to think of why they were able to do it. So they're big SaaS company, not big like Oracle. They're big though. They're meaningful in the market, and they ran up against a wall of growth and margin. Luckily, their head of strategy who was not only out of consulting, but had been one of our prodigies, right? Someone we had dealt with a lot. We were able to go in and help them transform to be PS led. They didn't use that word and think that way. And now 5 years later, they've tripled in value because PS, were developed. They were educated, but their role changed to, hey, what else are we going to get in this account, and how are we going to do that, and what's your account plan, and what's your account journey, and it all works. That it doesn't normally work that cleanly and nicely because all the different groups have such a different point of view and don't understand account journeys really. So,
yeah, I think predefining those account journeys is important for all of that. I think I see it a lot more in the front end of the overarching sales process, especially when PS organizations are more in their infancy, or at least a specific PS team's attachment to a specific product is in the early stages, where PS and solution architect or sales engineers or whatever, they share a role and responsibility there, and sometimes they're playing the primary role in helping to move a deal over the goal line because they can speak to we've been there before, we've done that, we know the roadblocks you're going to run into, and even if it's not part of the first project, they can anticipate the challenges a customer might have with implementing something or moving down that journey. That works really neatly. It's how do you design the process and the infrastructure so that group can stay involved, so that they're there to help pull through that next opportunity, can bring in the right people, the right resources, and connect all the dots. That becomes really challenging if you don't have the journey already defined.
And you don't create, and this is again that one client I was thinking of, and we didn't get to talk to Pat about it, maybe we'll get back together, is you have to have different offerings that keep you relevant on that journey. You've got to have some non-product based offers. You've got to have some what we would call intimacy, solving some other problems to build, to get paid, stay involved, build momentum so that you can pull through that next deal as opposed to push that deal. And but in our worldview, we definitely think PS has that ownership.
And the problem, I mean, you're a PS executive out there, you're listening to this, you say, hey, I want to do this. You probably have tried. The organization is sometimes resistant to it. Because what's PS's role in that process?
Sometimes resistant.
Okay.
Okay. Every single time. It's just like the other discussions we've had about use data to help. Yeah. We have to assume two things, and I think you did this really well in another talk, is it's our problem at PS, because nobody's going to solve it for us, and we have to educate them to get to there. But I agree with you, they're always going to be antibodies.
Yeah, they are very resistant to this whole thing, but when it works, they're the biggest fans that you can have, because now you're bringing in opportunities that are warm leads, that are you maximize the value of a client. And so it allows your other scarce resources and other functions to spend their time opening new doors, managing other relationships, and making sure that they're continuing to innovate and define future products and offerings.
Yeah.
So,
One last thought that brought to my mind what you said is when we have SaaS clients beginning to integrate with like some of our training or our comments or everything, sometimes they say, well, not all this applies to us, just this portion. And we always try to encourage them, no, try to expose yourself to all these pieces, because as you mature and your organizations mature and you mature in your own career and you have more opportunities, these are all the tools you need. So thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Look forward to seeing you again.